right. Well, hey, Foster, welcome to the John Moving Up Solider channel. This will be on Facebook this weekend and YouTube probably shortly, and who knows where else we'll end up. And, I figured we would start with you because you're also an author. You know the process that's involved in writing one of these books. So I figured we'd start with somebody with some experience. So welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you, John, and thank you for the opportunity to be on this amazing journey with you. I love the team that you've surrounded yourself with. You talking about Tremendous Jones and Charlie and his family, and now having Stacy with us. This is a tremendous opportunity, and the title of the book is so suiting. Not only moving up, but moving up 2020 and beyond. I like the beyond part, so it's a good start. It's good to be here, and as a good friend, I am just delighted, and I'm very, very fortunate for the opportunity.
Great. Well, thank you, Foster. So, how is this book going to impact your business? What are you going to do with it?
Yeah, so here's what I see with this book. This book in itself, even if I wasn't in the book, okay, this is a standalone book. Every single person that I know that has a pulse has this thing called desire. In other words, everybody has a desire to better themselves, whether in health or in wealth. And this book, because of the title, Moving Up, before we get into the content, because of the title, Moving Up, every single person has a desire to move up. I have said this many, many times that I've never met a person who feels too rich, too slim, too better looking. Everybody wants something more. So if you can move up, it's like, working on that desire that you have, this human instinct. So the fact that we have a book with a perfect title, with content that I would say is applicable to everyday's life. Every single person who's still breathing today, regardless of where they are in life today, would like to move up, would like to get better. Because one of the things that I believe drives every human being is you don't want to get to the end of your journey and start feeling that, oh my goodness, I should have push myself a little bit more. I should have gone the extra mile. So moving up is just one of those never ending, I would say, titles that it doesn't matter where you are. You can't say you have arrived, because by the time you get to the next level, you are reaching down to help the next person to come up. And guess what? There are so many people waiting for that hand. So I see this book, to answer your question precisely, as a powerful recruiting book, but as a tool, it's also one of those books that genuinely describes our intention for this industry, because every single person who understands the concept of network marketing, this is a business that everything is built from the ground up, okay? And what better way to get to the top than to reach to the bottom? So it has become a perfect tool for me to really build my organization with both my existing team and what I call the future leaders. So you have taken the pressure off me. I don't have to dig any further. I have gotten the right to. I mean, I have read this book about 3 times already, and I kept circling. Every time I go back, it's like, oh my goodness, did I miss this one the first time? So it's awesome.
So bigger picture, talk about your legacy, and when you go on to the next life, the fact that this book will be in your children's library, your grandchildren's library, that they'll be able to read about, dad and grandpa and even great grandpa down the road. What does that mean to you?
Well, I mean, John, you and I are not going to be here forever. I mean, if the good Lord grants us, because of what you and I have been taking, if we're lucky, another 100 years. I mean, that means we'll become dinosaurs in our own right. But, when you have a book, a printed document that has your name and a little bit of your story, because at the end of the day, let's face it, what inspires you and I is not so much having, another bowl of, let's say, soup, or, another portion of salad, or whatever your favorite dish might be. But at the end of the day, what keeps you and I going is when all this come to an end, what will people remember me by? And to have a piece of our story, as you know, a little bit of my story, as it's been quietly pointed in this wonderful book. I mean, I look at some of my story and you know, when I look at my own journey, I mean, coming from Africa and, you know, landed on this wonderful place called Canada, a land that I call paradise on earth. And of course, I'm talking to you as an American, so you're probably thinking, hey, how about us? Listen, we are brothers, we are neighbors, so we can't do without each other. But the most important thing for me is I came here seeking for the next opportunity. And to me, it's even accurate to say that seeking for the real opportunity, because I didn't have any. You know, my parents unfortunately passed when I was very young. And my story is one that in pieces, of course, my own family, my kids, are beginning to understand what I went through. Now, here I am in a book that is here to outlive you and I. This is a book that I would say is a legacy book. This is a book that someday somebody's going to reference you and I and make mention that, wow, I didn't know that there was a guy by the name Foster Wusu from a small town that I believe with even today's modern technology with Google, you Google my town, you try to look for the best affordable hotel, you get none. That's how far I have come. And there's no police station, there's no major hospital, there's no, in other words, there's no bank in my town. And here I am today talking to you about, you know, what you have eloquently written in your book that, you know, a fair day's work for a fair day's pay. This is a level playing field opportunity. And I'm saying this not to put myself down, but to say that if you are listening today, where else could a person who has come from a very remote area, and I'm not trying to paint a picture like, you know, I was worse off than anybody else on this planet, but the truth be known, you know, it wasn't easy. I've come from a very dark place. And yet, because I've been given an equal opportunity, a level playing field, here I am today talking to you. And it is accurate that the company that I represent, the company that you know very well, I was the very first person in the city of Toronto to earn over $1 million in commission. That in itself is a remarkable story. It goes to give hope. You know, you and I, we had the opportunity to spend some time with a fellow by the name Chris Gardner in Mexico, February of 2019 in Santa Fe. And I think when you listen to stories like Chris Gardner's or mine or somebody else that was so low to the bottom, when you go from being a homeless, thank God, I did not get to that point, but it was close. When you go from being a homeless person and today have an inspiring story that can give people hope, it's similar to my story. In other words, every single day when you and I take the stage, it's not because we're trying to give people false hope. When people say, how do you know that I can do it? It's as simple as saying, man, if John can do it, you can do it. If Foster can do it, you can do it. Your story, the reason why I use it all the time, if a person who just left college in 1983 with no business experience can become an industry giant, it gives hope. And I think part of our legacy, as you are asking this legacy question, part of our legacy is for somebody to look back years and maybe decades and who knows centuries later and say, wow, if these individuals who probably had it worse, because remember, when you and I started, this fast-speed technology machine that we have wasn't available, and yet we've made it this far. So the next generation can definitely do better if they choose. And everything about what we do here is about decision. I tell people it's not even how long you've been in this business, but when you decide to go to work. And I just get energized now that I have what I call the perfect tool, moving up 2020 and beyond. Come on, let's get a job done.
Love it, love it. Yeah, you know, it's funny you say that, Foster, because, you know, you and I obviously are good friends, you know, for many, many years. But, you know, I think that conversation that I had having lunch with Jim Rohn, the only time in my life I had a chance to really sit and visit with him with two other gentlemen in Dallas a number of years ago. And Jim was Jim. I mean, when Jim was on stage, he was Jim, and Jim off stage was pretty much Jim. And I'll never forget him saying, when you're gone, and Jim, of course, is gone now. One of the other individuals at that meeting is also gone to the next life. What's going to be left, is not all the expensive stuff that you own, but your library, right? The library that you leave behind is going to be so important for the next generation. Now we have a book with your story in it. And in telling your story, okay, it energized me, obviously, but let me go here for a minute. I want to know what those children of yours thought when they saw their dad written about in a book. I know you've written a book yourself, but written about in a book. What the kids think when you show them?
Now, this is getting emotional, John, because, I mean, I'm looking back and, you mentioned Jim Rohn, but let's say, by far my ultimate mentor was a man by the name Rich DeVos, whom unfortunately left us, late last year. And I remember in the late 80s when I was a new person in this industry, this man tapped me on my shoulder. And I wrote about him in my book in chapter 7 and, talking about expectations. But this man saw something in me that I did not even see or I did not even recognize. And when today, I look back, that simple touch on my shoulder saying, son, you have the right posture. You keep doing what you're doing, you become successful in the future. Now, this is not a person who flatters anybody with words. This man, great, observant in his own right, and this is a man that I believe has the gift of being able to see through a person. And let me say this, even though I was in my 20s at the time, this is where faith and trust comes in. I took his word to heart and I trusted everything that he said. Today, not only that my family is proud of what I have accomplished with the help of so many people, but what it does to a person's soul is the fact that suddenly you are also breathing hope into these children because they are watching what is happening in your life. I mean, here we are today. It is Thursday, and I haven't left home yet. And this is unusual for, let's say again, an immigrant from Africa in a small town that I would say, less than 5,000 people. And here we are today on a Thursday morning, Thursday afternoon, depending on where you are. I'm able to make decisions by choice, not by force. When you send out the invitation to be on this call, I jumped on it, I accepted it. And, I didn't have to ask anybody, is it okay if I take, few hours to go and speak to my good friend, John? These are some of the things that I would say to some extent is so intangible that it's very difficult to explain to the new person that, in life, two things that I would say will happen, and it depends on how it happens. You pay a price. The difference is whether you pay now and play later or play now and pay the price later. Either way, you're going to pay a price. But I think when people make the decision to apply some of the concepts that you are teaching us in the book, whether it's about trying to use your full-time hours to support your current livelihood and use your network marketing opportunity to create the what we call MSI, which is multiple streams of income. When you were here in Toronto, we were fortunate to have you again bless us with your presence in Toronto. And again, you mentioned that network marketing could be another avenue to have your own multiple streams of income, which is an add-on. And this is what makes this industry so unique. You don't have to quit whatever you've been doing. If you love your profession because you invested years and money into it, now you have something that in a very systematic way, in your own time, your own space, you can build something on the side. And as my wife always say, extra means extra. So of course, my kids, my daughter who you've met, she's almost 19. She was born into this business. She's in university. But guess what? This girl already knows that she doesn't want to work for anybody. She's getting her education because she knows that is fundamental. She must have that. We are providing for that. We're supporting that. But guess what? For her to have the confidence to know that she can be her own boss, again, you ask a simple question. What do my kids think? And I'm giving you a long answer, arriving at this point, saying that she's watching her dad, who came from a small town in a small country on the west coast of Africa, who's made it to Canada. In her case, she was born here. What is going to get in her way to not become her own boss in the future? She's already seen the example in her dad. So for me, I think this is a legacy piece. You and I were talking the other day, and we talk about our own particular company, that every time you hear people say, I would like to leave a legacy, I would like to leave a legacy. We are already legends in our own field. It's not to be prideful, but the fact that we have laid the foundation for others to run on this track, that is probably becoming a highway for them. We have already created a legacy. We may not be talked about today because we are still in a competitive game where everybody is shining, but I guarantee you, centuries from now, when you and I are gone, somebody will make reference that this guy called John Solider, his leadership, with others that we have on this call, including Keith Hoop and others, his leadership led a small company in a small town, in a small city, in a small country, population-wise, and eventually became a global, enterprise because some visionaries said yes. And that is how we came in. Because of you, because of Keith, some of us have gotten a piece of this dynasty that eventually is going to become a global giant. And guess what? When we are gone, it doesn't matter, because to this day, I can make reference to myself, and I would say to this point, I'm probably still the first African-American Canadian who has made it this far in this industry. That in itself is a legacy that history can never erase. I was the first in my particular unique culture to be at the rank that I'm at, the first in this city called Toronto to be at this rank. And even if I don't go beyond where I am today, history has been made. And that makes my kids and my family very proud.
Wow, powerful stuff. So Rich DeVos was obviously a pretty good judge of talent and posture, needless to say. And I never had the privilege of meeting Mr. DeVos, but I know you certainly did. I know the day that he passed, I know you and I spent some time talking about your experiences with him and so many other leaders I know in the industry that obviously were impacted by him, and even me indirectly, never having met the man or being part of his company, what an impact that he certainly had. And to the point when we talk about legacy, so many of these people, Mr. DeVos, Mr. Rohn, they're not with us anymore, unfortunately, in body, but they're with us forever because they created a long-term path for so many people to run on. So let's close with this, Foster. What's Foster's plans for the future with the book, with your individual business? Where are you going from here?
John, let me hold this book one more time. 2020 and beyond. So let me close with this. In the late 80s, a great man, a great humanitarian, a man of faith, tapped me on my shoulder and breathed into me what I call real life. Breathe into me real life. And I'm referring Mr. Rich DeVos, and said something to me, Foster, you have the right posture. You keep doing what you're doing, you become successful someday. And as much as success is all relative to a person's own definition, now the baton has been handed to me. I now have the opportunity to do the same thing, if not more, if not better, what Mr. Rich DeVos did for me. Because remember, as scripture talks about, to whom much is given, much is expected. Well, this unique opportunity, Keith have said it many, many times, and I'll quote, the opportunity that we have with our particular unique product, with our company, this is a gift from God. How do you then keep this secret to yourself? It's like the Great Commission that we talk about in scripture. You can't keep it to yourself. It's not about how well I have done or how well you are doing or how well I am doing or kids or anybody who's on this call. But the most important thing is, who else is going to benefit? And I think this is where the next chapter of our life, this is where all this is taking us. What is Foster's going to do for the next person who has never heard about this great industry? You said in your book so eloquently that, you know, when you talk to a person, they may not say yes right now because of the timing. They're probably enjoying that executive position that they have. They're probably enjoying a new career that they've been on. But what happens when something changes tomorrow? Suddenly they go, wow, I remember this Foster guy. Even though I wasn't ready then, let me call and find out if his contact is still active. You know, every time you talk about contact capital, this is something that I believe is worth more in the bank than the actual cash. So our job is just beginning, John, if I can say this. You and I, for the next 10, 20 years, we got a lot of work to do. And I'm definitely excited. I want to thank you for the opportunity. Anybody who is listening to this, I must say, if you have never come in contact with John and Keith or myself or anybody who is part of this movement, do yourself a favor. Find a way to reach out, because you never know. At the end of the day, what we do is not just about us, but it's about somebody else who's going to have this life-altering opportunity to change the world. And if it takes one person to get a job done, we have accomplished our goal. Thank you, John, for the opportunity. Appreciate it.
Well, great. Then thank you, Foster. And, you know, for those of you who are listening, you know, on Facebook or on YouTube or any of the other social medias that we're using, if you want to get a copy of this book, it's digital. It's also hard copy or soft copy, technically. You just go to www.tremendousleadership.com. That's tremendousleadership.com. It's under the new title section. We use Tremendous Books Company for a lot of reasons, one of which is that they've got some other great titles, some of the classics that they actually market. So you can buy our book, certainly, which will help you in the direct selling industry, and you can buy some of the other classics if you want. So once again, tremendousleadership.com. Under new titles is our book. Will be available in Spanish here in the next couple of weeks as well, and eventually French, and maybe even a couple other languages. So Foster, you're the first interview for this, so almost nice to be first, right? So thank you again, and you have a blessed day, blessed weekend. I know it's Thanksgiving in Canada this weekend, so have a great weekend with the family as well.
Thank you.